Hello guys and welcome to today's daily puzzle Forcing Moves Jackpot. Let's get right to it. So what do I see? Well, I see that the king is pretty safe over here, completely surrounded by its own pieces and even with an escape over here. Why is that escape relevant? Well, because once it manages to escape over there and to the left side of the board, it is completely safe and away, gone from all of our pieces, which are on the right side of the board. Now, luckily though, we do have an ace up our sleeve, being our queen, which we can sacrifice by taking the knight and forcing them to use their king to take it back. Sure, it costs us a knight, or rather our queen, but by doing so, it does bring out the king into the open. So let's start off with that. And now we have quite a few possibilities. Because as you can see, now the king is under some major pressure from both our knight, our pawn, our bishop, and as you might notice, that makes two very vulnerable squares, being either here for our rook to slide in and to deliver a check, or possibly for our bishop to slide in over here and deliver a check of its own. Now, obviously, if we use the bishop over here, well, then the king is forced to move over there. However, if we use the rook over here, well, then they can either escape or use their pawn to capture. Both options, which we don't really like, but clearly with one winner, as the bishop is the most forcing piece at the moment. However, we also have one more option, actually being the knight over here, because once this gives a check, it also forces the king to go back, but which is actually better than if we use the bishop, is that this also makes it so the knight isn't under attack, which if we use the bishop obviously means that the knight will come under attack. So instead of the bishop, we are going to use the knight to give the check, forcing the king back. But then it's, I hear you say, that is where the king was prior to us sacrificing the queen. So what do we do now? Well, obviously we do not want the king to escape, so we are going to use our bishop at this point in time to deliver that check once more. Obviously they do interpose as they have nothing else left to do, because this point now still is covered by our knight, which is a difference between the prior position. And now, well, as you might notice, this is covered, that's not covered. But how can we cover that? Well, we can actually cover it by sacrificing the bishop, as that's the only way we have at that point to give a check that doesn't allow the king to escape. But now we are in an even better position, because these two squares are covered by the pawn. Oh, sorry. These two squares, obviously. These two squares are covered by the bishop. This square is covered by the rook, and obviously also these squares. And this square is covered by the knight, meaning that if we can now give a safe check without losing control over any of those squares, we do have checkmate. And here we go. As you might notice, the arrow of the rook and bishop were overlapping, meaning that this will be our winning rook square. There we go. That's checkmate. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, and hopefully see you next time. Bye.